Hey guys, what's up? Good morning and welcome to the webinar. And today webinars we have Federico Smanio. Thanks for being with me today, Federico, in this live webinar where we are live actually on Facebook and YouTube. You can follow the live streaming both on Wylab YouTube and Facebook channels, as well as on mine, clearly. Today, we will talk about how startup companies are facing this dramatic crisis in the COVID-19 era, and most importantly, how they can potentially transform, change, or adapt their business in preparation to the post-COVID era. I want to remind some housekeeping information. I want to remind everyone that is listening this live streaming that you can make questions to me and Federico whenever you wish. So just type any question that you wish to raise to Federico or to myself on both YouTube or Facebook. Federico, thanks for being with me today.
Thank you for having me. It's a real pleasure to be here with you, Fabio, today.
Thank you. So before starting, Federico, you know what? Maybe most of us don't remember, but yesterday I've been looking in the past, our story, and I found a few companies that actually started during crisis time, like we're living, unfortunately, right now. In particular, I penciled 5 companies, big companies actually, that when they started were very, very little, they're very small, and they started the operation during big crisis. I penciled 5, 1837, Procter & Gamble. They started during the crisis of 1837. The General Electric during the crisis in 1873. During the oil crisis, so more recently in 1973, FedEx started the operation during a crisis time. In the same year, Microsoft. And more recently, and probably most of us know this company very well, in 1982, EA Sports, the famous gaming company well known for
Yes.
a variety of cool games such as FIFA. Federico, first and foremost, as a chief executive officer of a big company and a startup incubator, how difficult is this moment for a startup incubator like Wylab, and how do you see this particular period, dramatic period, especially in Italy, where we are living a dramatic situation?
So this is a very strange time we're living in because COVID-19 is basically contradicting everything that we've already thought about sport. If you think, we thought about some main beliefs around sport, a sort of universal law that governs sport as an alternative asset, non-correlated with the rest of the economy, acyclical, and recession-proof. I don't know if you agree with me, but we've always agreed on this main principle about sport. But what we are seeing now is an interruption, suspension, or cancellation of main sports events around the world, from the Olympics to Euro 2020 to Serie A to NBA to pro and amateur leagues. So everything is shutting down. And this is raising big questions on the sustainability of the industry as a whole, as to what extent this kind of interruption in live events can or will impact ticket sales, sponsorships, media rights money, and agreements. And the other thing that I'm thinking of is the sport has always been the arm around the shoulder. I've read this in a recent article. I like the idea of an arm around the shoulder at times of major trauma, but we are in the middle of it. So this is totally new. Startups, going back to your question, are a very delicate and special kind of enterprise. They need frequent money, fundraising to sustain investment and their activities and develop their business. And so in time of crisis, as we are living now, well, basically all industry are seeing a halt to their activities. It's much more difficult for them to raise money. So this is honestly a bit tricky. We are seeing depending on the areas of activity of startups, then we can dive deep in some of the examples of Wylab. We are seeing, generally speaking, a dropping business activity. In some cases, a disruption in supply chain for especially startups who develop hardware, for example, and they need some components from Asia or China, for example. And also an interruption of travel and meetings that in some cases are important elements of developing business for startups. So this is my take, my first take. So going back to your questions, yes, we are facing a difficult time, not just for startups, but also for incubators, I guess, as we serve startups. So we are, in particular, Wylab is a startup itself. So we are in the middle of this. We are just trying to be very careful and trying to change the assumptions around the business in order to adapt to this big crisis.
Yeah, and I see many companies that actually, you mentioned something very true, how companies are transforming their production, the factory production, and adapting as quick as possible. And it's not an easy task, but fortunately also the technology enables most of those companies to serve a better understanding, a better situation that we're living right now. Federico, how many startups now have you been launched in the last year, the last 12 months? And can you describe a little bit the service that you guys in terms of Wylab are providing? Because I am sure that some of the people that are listening our live events today are not knowing very well.
So let me just make a brief introduction of what Wylab is, and then I will answer your question. Wylab is the first Italian sports tech incubator. What we do is select, support, fund early stage startups, initiatives that produce innovative technologies and services for the sports industry. This is what we do. We were founded 4 years ago in 2016 in Chiavari, beautiful little city in the Liguria coast. It's a couple of hours drive south from Milan. And we are position ourselves as a catalyst for the complex ecosystem made of, on one hand, on one side, sports federations, leagues, clubs, athletes, and the other, or investors, startups, universities, research centers, and tech brands. And we try to bring, our mission is to bring innovation into the world of sports. We don't do just that. You know, the incubator business model is pretty complicated. So the business model is like investing in early stage companies and then hoping that these companies will grow and eventually exit and profit from the value created from the companies in this time. But it is like a 5 or 7 years activities, usually term. So it's a pretty long term. In the meantime, in order to create a sustainable business, we offer a variety of different services to businesses of all sizes, from advisory work to startups and different services to startups, to what we call open innovation to big corporations, to professional training courses that we launch around business analytics in football, for example, entrepreneurship, marketing, communication, leadership, and digital transformation. So as far as startups, we offer training courses. Honestly, it's like more than a training, is a acceleration on incubation programs. It's like a 3 months time business training activities to transform startups into real companies. So this is the idea. We offer a physical space to startups which wants to exploit the physical place of Wylab. We have a 1,500 square meters building in Chiavari, in which we offer office space and co-working spaces, facilities, networking possibilities with the community, events, and communication and branding features. The the special thing about Wylab is that we are not just Wylab, we are a hub of companies and initiatives around sports and tech. First of all, Scout, which I like to mention. Scout is the main database, the biggest database of data and video in football. Is the most popular tools of managers, analysts, players, referees, agencies around the world to do video analysis of football and scouting of players. Scout has been recently acquired by the Huddle Group. It's an American-based company doing something similar than Wylab, but bigger than Scout. And so this is the origin of Wylab. So and the entrepreneur is from Chiavari, and it was helped by the Gozzi family, which is the owners of Wylab, to develop. So they were the main investor, and so they decided to create and to fund and to found the incubator in order to develop similar initiatives in sports tech. Now we have a football club playing in second division, Serie B, Virtus Entella, which is the club owned by the owner group and the holding, which allows us to test and experiment all the technologies that we develop in the incubator. We have a network of startups, incubator and innovation centers, entrepreneurs, mentors. We do fundraising activities. So we invest directly with seed investments, not like big money, but on the range of 20 to 100K for each single initiative. But we also are able to gather and attract business angels, venture capital, family offices, crowdfunding platforms, and also provide service around EU and national public funds. We also develop business for startups, especially in the area of sports, trying to promote their activities and products to clubs, leagues and federations, sports institutions, sports tech, and media companies. I don't want to go too far with this, but just to give you a bit of info around Wylab's current affairs, we've launched and completed Wylab incubation program last year in 2019. We had like 7 startups. We didn't invest in the startups, even though there were nice initiatives, because we focused our attention and our investments on the startups that initially were part of Wylab incubation program, which are the startups that actually live in the building in Wylab. And these are like 3 or 4 initiatives. And then we can, if we have time, we can talk about this. These were the first initiative in which Wylab invested in 2017, and now they have grown, they've developed, and needed more funds. So we followed on the first investment, giving them more money in order to develop their business.
And sorry if I interrupt you, Federico. I have a question actually from Michele that is raising, I think, a very good question. What are the key indicators that a startup company has to have in order to start talking to Wylab? So basically, he's asking what are the information that you guys need to collect from a startup, and making sure they are on the right track, and making sure they can be part of this incubator.
Well, I would say they have to have a solution to a problem, which is the main thing we're looking for. Should be a big problem of the world of sports, and they should potentially have a great solution for this problem. So this is the problem-solution fit. And there should be a market for the product and services that they are trying to they have created. So we are trying to we do a sort of a due diligence to understand if there's markets, because we are not looking for products and services, but we are looking for businesses at the end of the day. So we need to find, profitable and business if we want to invest in these businesses. Not that this is easy to understand, but this is the main job that we have. And then I think the third element, we don't have just 3 elements of this, like many different factors and elements, but the main thing that we trying to understand in the beginning is the team, the people around the project, the founders, how serious they are, how strong they believe in the project. So all this is very relevant for us. And so I would say a solution to a big problem, market, and a team are the main, the initial elements to understanding if a project can work with us. Then we have different levels of services. So if we have the idea is to invest in a startup. Those are the main elements. The other thing is this is true for early stage initiatives, early stage startups. More consolidated or growth stage startups might need something else. Maybe they're already companies, they have already a structured team, they have already a solution, they have clients, they make money, they have traction. In this case, what we can offer and provide to startups is business development, so opening doors to especially the Italian sports world, but not necessarily just the Italian sports market, but open markets in the Italian market, and fundraise, so help them fundraise either directly from Wylab or gathering together all those players that I mentioned initially. In that case, we can help them even without investing by helping them grow the business and raise money. So in this case, we are an enabler more than a direct investor. In some cases, there's a hybrid, because in the recent past, we've recently done a deal with a startup, and everything started as a business development activity. This is a foreign startup. It's an Israeli and United States startup that wanted to grow in the Italian market. So we started working with them. They were happy of what we did, and we were happy of them. And then we eventually invested in this startup. So it depends. There's no single recipe and one size fits all, but it depends on the level of growth of startups. But those three elements, especially for small initiatives and in the beginning, are the elements that we look for.
And how physically a startup can reach you out? Is there any process?
Yeah, we have there's the website www.wylab.net or net, and there's a particular section of the website in which all initiative startups can just upload information. There's a very simple questionnaire, I would say, in which there's we asked startups to explain the projects, to tell us about their competitors and how they intend to make money, and then they can raise questions and ask questions to us. We evaluate this sort of applications, and we decide if we can. There's room for working together with them, either from an advisory perspective from Wylab, or for more structured programs like acceleration or incubation programs. During the acceleration and incubation programs, we have a more, let's say, formalized process. We launch a process of program, and so we open doors for like 2 or 3 months in which they can enroll a program. This has happened in 2019, for example. We have a pre-selection process. Sorry.
I know that you are at home, like everyone, so no worries.
Apologies for this. We have a pre-selection process, and then there's a selection day, which we selected 7 startups out of 16, and then there were like 19 taking part in the initial process. And then we have three months of special training, and at the end we have an investor day, which we present the startups to investors. So this is the typical process that we follow. But we are not going to do this in 2020. So this doesn't mean that we don't grow startups, but the easiest way is to write to us, to apply in our website and send us information, and then we will get back to the startups and see if we can work together. So we usually then organize a video conference call. Now it's, of course, compulsory. There's no alternative, but we usually do a video call in any case, even prior to this crisis. And eventually we meet in person, and we try to see if there's interest from us in offering services to startups. It's not just startups asking help, but it's us understand if we can really help and what the best services we can offer to these companies.
And I think one of the main assets that you guys can offer is also the networking, right? Because you have great connection with, let's say, all the main stakeholders, specifically in a sport vertical. So that's, I think, is a big value added as well for startup companies that want to approach Wylab.
Yes, this is one of the things that we've improved, I guess, from last 18 months. We're trying to do better, which is basically, well, I come from the sports world, so it was pretty automatic for me to liaise with my former colleagues or the people I knew working in football, but not just football, trying to see if they wanted to know more about innovation programs, and they wanted to know more about startups that are particularly related and connected to their own business. So this is the first thing that we did, and we are trying to do this. It's not easy because the sports world is not really, I would say, open to innovation in general. It's really hard for them to spend money on innovation. So we are trying to improve this. So the offer side is pretty active. There's lots of initiatives around sports tech, for example, in the area that we're more expert on. But there's less activity on the demand side. So the demand side, sports institutions and organizations are less prone to start programs, innovation programs, what we call open innovation, or look for startups. And so it's complicated, but we do this, and we do this with pretty good success.
Great. So let's switch a moment off topic right now. So you have a very let's say, huge experience as a digital director of Lega B, the Italian second division of football. Unfortunately, sport is the bigger prize, one of the bigger prize. There is no sports events at all. There are no live streaming. There is no possibility to watch basically any sport. I just realized yesterday that there are a couple of countries that are still playing, but very let's say minor sport. So what a sport property should work out in a moment, according to your information, in the moment in which we are living? What do you suggest to do if you were leading a sport league or club right now? I know this is a tricky question, but you have a huge experience, and I'd like to know more about what you think a company can do right now, a sport property can do right now.
Well, it's a difficult question, honestly. What I see people are doing, I have experience from my 8 years of Lega B, but this is a strange time, and especially in digital and social media, everything evolves very rapidly. So what happened to work, what worked 2 years ago doesn't mean that works now. And this is a very strange, in particular, dramatic and extraordinary period that we're living. So what I'm seeing, and what I think is right, that sports organizations are tapping into the archive contents, which is something, showing what happened. Matches from the past. This is done at all levels, from FIFA that started to show all the finals and matches of the former editions, or the editions of the World Cup, or past editions of the World Cup, and this is done at all levels. What you could add to this, I've read something interesting about this. It's a new way of commentary to this. So you could get creative on having someone else commenting on on the past matches. Why not players themselves or media people? Then there's of course the big area is for me trying to understand to exploit and leverage this forced prison that we are all in, trying to tap into the more authentic stories of players, athletes, and coaches. So understand what is life behind the curtains, what is the life of players and athletes when they are at home, and from a real stories. So this is gives us the opportunity to, I would say, dive into the aspects of life with players. At the end of the day, players are used to being recruited in some respects, so they can teach us something. And then I see that there are programs around psychology of players now, and this can be applied to everyday and to all mortals, to every one of us. And the other thing is fitness. You see it everywhere. Everyone is trying to do fitness at home. So players and athletes and coaches can teach by definition. So this is something that is could be funny, or could be fun on one hand and useful on the other. Then it's that there's all the things around gaming and esports that are getting momentum, not just because of COVID. Esports are growing, but in particular when there's no live events, we could. This is an area of activities that we can really do wonders with.
I see MotoGP was doing a very great experience yesterday. All the driver connected at the same time and playing in MotoGP games, video games. It was really, really interesting. Yeah.
Then there's like I don't know if you read about the Leyton Orient football club in the UK. They did something very creative. They were one of the first, and everyone followed, trying to liaise other football clubs and organize FIFA games on esports, and with all players. So this is something that is happening and quite often, and it can't go on forever, because I think honestly speaking, we miss live events. If we take live from sport, there's no reason to have sports. So that's a reason why everyone talks. Everyone thinks as a coach, or everyone thinks to be relevant and discuss football and sports. This is why. So this has to be temporary. The other thing, maybe special offers. I see it often. Especially for big institutions and players who have like OTT services, and they like subscription services, and these are usually services that people pay. And in this case, I see that they are being offered for free. So this is a good way to engage with fans and let fans see what the services that this organization offer. And what I've read recently was an article and an initiative created by a friend of mine, was really expert on digital, is Carlo De Marchis. I guess you know him.
I know very well, Carlo. Actually on live soon. That's it.
Okay. So I don't want to spoil that for you, but Carlo has launched an initiative on around sports hiatus, which is how sports managers and experts can bring their creativity to, let's say, gather all the most interesting and original activities and initiatives and ideas that can be applied to sports organizations. So sort of an informal process of brainstorming and of the best practice that we can use for digital applying to sports in this particular time. The other thing, the last thing that I wanted to mention is not digital, it's physical. It seems to me pretty logical, but it's not easy to do. And I see that sports people are, in some cases, offering services to hospitals, institutions to help with the crisis. So I read something interesting on the Pordenone's captain. Pordenone is a club of Serie B where Vitesse plays. And the captain of one of the clubs of Serie B offered his house as a space for the Pordenone hospital. Pordenone is a city in the northeastern part of Italy. And of course, you know, the northern parts of Italy, especially Lombardy and Veneto, are facing, you know, the most important hotbeds of the crisis and the virus. So he offered his house to the hospital. This is happening also with Watford in UK. They offered spaces to the local medical people and working and addressing the coronavirus and helping them with spaces. So I would say, apart from this, which is emergency, all the rest is something that you see it already done. It's difficult to add a layer of creativity to these things because you can do that. I mean, but it's difficult because players, you know, this is not going to last forever. So, fans need to be engaged. Fans are starving for sports, so they're waiting for us to put content on the table. But this content can't be, you know, if there's no live, this is going to be in some way consumed very, very early. So, and then there's more time than usual. So people are spending time at home, so they have more time to consume content. So we are seeing a rise in the consumption, in media consumption. But so we need to fill this gap.
Yeah. So we didn't speak about digital transformation. No, I think we touched in some cases, but we didn't enter too much. So digital transformation, from my point of view, is really booming, and now we see a big acceleration due to this COVID-19. So how will this crisis impact, you know, new startup companies, new projects that will be coming in the next months? Is it for your opinion, is it really changing the way on how people do business? And maybe most importantly, I would say, how startup company can transform this crisis into an opportunity if they can.
Well, we've seen it. You mentioned in the beginning some companies, iconic companies, were actually formed and shaped during financial downturns. You mentioned, you know, some big names. We could also say Google and PayPal after the dot-com bust, but also Airbnb, Square, Stripe. In the midst of the global financial crisis of 2008, right? So it happens. What we know from Darwin is that you know, we read it pretty often recently of this. The ones who survive are not the strongest, but the most able to adapt to change. But this is honestly true even before COVID-19. So I happen to speak to people around sports, innovation, digital transformation, and this is something that sports organizations should be already doing in terms of adapting to digital transformation. Digital transformation is already here, even before this crisis. So what sports players should do is establish a more direct relationship with fans, for example, and this starts from knowing fans better. So, and becoming more fan-centric. It doesn't have nothing to do with the current crisis, but I don't see this very often being the case in the sports world. especially in the non-top tier of sports. So the idea of trying to understand how many fans and how many fans do I have as a sports institution or as a sports team, and how can I offer services, contents, and things that are preferred to them. So to do this, I need to have and establish and set up a sort of a CRM system, or a system to acquire data, enrich data, and analyze data. This is something that should be already in place, but this is not the norm, because sports organization don't usually have a long-term vision. So what this crisis is posing us, the question of changing our habits and our business models to look at more long-term instead of what we say just opposite to our nose. Short-termism is something that has always driven decisions in the sports world, whereas long-term should be embraced from organization. What this means is that if you embrace technology, digital, and a direct relationship, you're able to leverage a direct relationship with fans. This allows you to create new sources of revenues. And as we are seeing now, that this crisis is, of course, is putting lots of money at risk. And as a matter of fact, sports organizations are trying to negotiate a reduction in salaries of players. We are thinking of around 30%. And this is not, we don't know if this is enough to save football, for example, who spends from 70 to 90% of their value produced on player salaries. I was telling, if this is enough to save the sports world from the shock we are living. But of course, creating new sources of revenues allow you to create at least a basis for a more sustainable future. The other thing is extending the possibility of fun engagement. So if you embrace technology, this is not just the smart working thing that we are doing now with all the video conferencing that, honestly, they were already there. We didn't need to invent anything. But thinking of new ways to interact with fans and extend the touch points that we have with them is definitely something that we should be looking for. This is why esports is important. Just an example of an extension of the assets of a sports club in order to attract new fans, to extend the possibilities and benefits to sponsors. And the other thing is we need to start running instead of walking on the territory of creating partnerships with sponsors and letting them increase the return of investment in sponsorships that are now, even before this crisis, not necessarily high, due to the fact that sports haven't always been able to connect sponsors with fans. It's not easy, but I think this is one of the answers. And if this crisis, I like to mention a Chinese name. A crisis, the Chinese translation of crisis is weiji. Weiji is a combination of two names. One is weixian, which is danger, and the other one is jihui, which is opportunity.
By the way, to the people that doesn't know you very well, I must say, and you will have to say that you speak Mandarin. You can speak.
Yeah, I'm a bit rusted at the moment, honestly. So don't ask me to speak Mandarin, but I've studied it for a little bit, and so I wanted to mention this because it's important. In some cases, Chinese world interesting to study. So you have the Chinese translated word for crisis has two components. One is danger, and the other one is opportunity. So if you see, we have to think to use these times of crisis to understand, to change the assumption about our business. And I've read something about this from some sports leaders, and I hope this will be really put into practice as sports have, the opportunity to think and to go deeper, dig deeper into their assumptions, their business model. So understand how they can do what they can do to create a more sustainable future. And I think this has to go via a new relationship with fans, new revenue streams that come as a consequence of having established a direct relationship and a more profitable relationship with fans, I would say. And this is not done yet.
So I wanna go back very quickly to a point that I think you mentioned, and I totally agree, that is about data, is about the long-term vision versus the short-term vision of most of the company, and not just in sport, by the way. I think many sectors are in the same basket, let's say. And in your opinion, is more an old management style approach, is more looking at a profitability only, or is about not having also talent people around you that can enable your company to push it forward? So how you view it? Because my view is most of the companies, specifically in the sports sector, are very old style. They have a very old style approach, let's say. But said that, and it's okay. I mean, we are living, especially in some country, most of the people have still a very old mentality, but that's acceptable as long, in my opinion, as you have and you are around by talent people. What is lacking, in my opinion, is properly talent people around the organization.
Yeah, I think this is you might seem a question of the egg and the hen. So what comes first? And the chicken. I don't know if it's that in English. But I think it's I don't agree with you. I think it's the former. It has to be a top-down approach. It has to be a management, more than management, I would say the owners buy-in. This is the first element. If you don't have that, you can't have the talent, because if you don't have top-level management and the owners' ideas and approach on a long term, you can't hire talent. So you need someone to understand that short term is not the answer. On the contrary, the long term is the answer. And you have someone, and if these people who take decision to put money into sports have this kind of approach, everything else is feasible, because then you will start a process of acquiring people with talent. There are lots of people with talent, and there are lots of situations and courses that are being organized year on year, and that produce highly talented people for the sports world. So there are like lots of opportunities, but you need to grasp them. So I think it's a question of approach, and then of course I agree with you when you say that if you don't have talented people, you can't do things, you can't progress on this area, and you need to have people willing to learn on a very fast pace, because you know that this world of digital is in some respect very difficult, because everything changes very rapidly. So you need to have vision, and then you need to have the specialists, and you need to have structure. So what I see, honestly, from my perspective and from my point of observation, is that on an average, sports organization have people doing lots of different stuff, and they have lots of different tasks on their shoulders. And of course, this doesn't allow that to do things well, to do a variety of different things, let alone have people dedicated to digital transformation, innovation. So I've read something, I've written something for one of the most important Italian university. They asked me an opinion on the future jobs in sports, and I said, there are like 7 or 8 that I envision. And of course, one is a chief innovation officer, and then there's the CRM fan relationship manager. Then there's the content marketing expert. It's nothing new for the rest of the industries, but for sports, these are not like this is not common. Having someone dedicating her time to think of content for fans, just for that. That's one of the most important things. But if you look at the at all the players, all the clubs and teams, I would say personnel, you see this in the top and high level clubs. And this is why we're talking about polarization in sports, because you have like a small number of organizations that are growing fast and they are competing at let's say in the world stage. And then you have all the rest who are lagging behind. So we need to be able to make them grow and sustain the growth of these other clubs. And if you don't see these kinds of people working in clubs. The other thing is football data analysts, for example, the data scientists in football, just to name football because it's a sport I know more than the others. For example, we have launched and we are promoting a course. We are the second, we should do it in June, depending on what happens. But it's a second edition, and what we are trying to do is train people to do football analysis in football for all clubs. So people coming from faculties like mathematics, statistics, data science, and could be employed in sports team, or people working already in football clubs that want to upgrade the knowledge and want to become better and at understanding data and giving insights to the people working in the pitch. So on the pitch. So this is one thing. And then you have all the other area of business and marketing, which is very important. So you need talent and you need to have people on board helping you with this. But you need, as an owner, if I were an owner, I would understand it. I don't have the money, so I miss that. But if I had the money and I wanted to invest in sport and football, this is already a good thing. I mean, this is really difficult, and I would say that we need to say thank you to the people who spend money in sports, even with the big uncertainty of getting money back, but having money. And most of these people are, driven by passion and by genuine commitment. Not all these are bad. I mean, examples of people investing in sports and football that are moved by their own business, and this has been the case. But there are lots of other examples of people investing in sports, knowing that they will lose money, but they do this because of the love of sports. One of these, it's too easy for me to say, is president of Virtus Entella, which is the president of Wylab. And he took on the club in 2007, I guess. And he's managed the club from the amateur leagues to the professional leagues in an absolutely splendid way. They are growing a club which is more than a club on the pitch. So we are totally dedicated and devoted to innovation. This is the idea. Not that we are achieving 100% of this, but we are moving towards a vision of being an innovative club. And this should be done by more and more owners. So my hope is that we can have more people managing clubs, thinking with this kind of mindset.
No, that's That's very interesting. I know your personal story, so I'm totally with you. And now, Federico, can you name some of the coolest projects that you guys and your team have been working in the last month? Clearly, previous to the start of this crisis, any startup or project that is worthy to mention, specifically for an innovation standpoint? Yeah.
Okay, so I would mention Zone 7. First and foremost, is that's the startup that I mentioned earlier when I said that I was explaining to you that we are working with this Israeli and United States startups, and what they do is basically they've created a artificial intelligence, which is now a neural network of a system to this is not the correct way to say it, but to understand and to evaluate the risk for players to get injured. So the risk of injuries for players, and then offer adjustments to their training schedules in order for them to be safe and healthy. So this is why I mentioned this, because they are very good. These guys have an experience in. They've had an experience in big companies like Salesforce on the artificial intelligence side of the business, and they worked in the Israeli intelligence, and they've now deploying all they've learned into sports. But the other reason I mentioned this is because this is very relevant for sport now. So sports is suffering, has always suffered from injuries. Injuries at all levels are affecting the way football teams can use the whole roster.
You are an example of during your football career as well.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. I've been pretty lucky, but honestly, if I had Zone 7 during my career, I would have done much better in terms of performances. Why not? Because this is a system that on an ongoing base, by tracking all the performance data that the clubs have at disposal and merging this with the injury data, they're able to do a pattern recognition and to correlate the risk of a single player to getting injured. So they've working with several clubs around the world. And now the more data that they're able to acquire, the better it would be for the system to work. So, of course, Virtus and Tela has acquired the system. As a first example in Italy, we are in dialogue and we are discussing with top clubs this service. And we are also active in other parts of the world. And I really believe this is game changing. And also, if we think of the hopefully championship will restart soon. So if championship starts, we will have a more congested schedule, and so they are trying to help clubs during a congestion time to manage the roster in the best way. So this is one. The other thing is a totally different story. Is a startup that it was created by 3 guys living close to Chiavari, people from Liguria, and they've been working like 3 years on an idea of creating an application for tracking data of combat sports, MMA, mixed martial arts, and boxing, especially MMA, by merging sensors into an underglove used by fighters under the actual glove, and this system is able to track all the the movements that they're doing, the punches that they're giving, the velocity, acceleration, and the way they're performing, the physical data. They've merged this into an application. This will be what we believe will be game changing also in the combat sport, on the allowing all people doing this not at professional level to improve the way they train. And so as it is happening with running, for example, and everyone is using like different applications like Strava or Runtastic or Garmin or whatever to have more knowledge and engagement and involvement in what they do, and they can have the feedback of the data coming from their own body. So this is going to happen in combat sports. So we are working with them hard to launch this during the course of 2020. Of course, this crisis is giving us problems because everyone is being postponed. Everything is being postponed. So we need to understand. We need to reevaluate. But this is one of the startups that I think is more interesting. The other one, to mention three, is and the second one is called Techne, and it's a local startup. Is a social application for sports, allows people to look for their preferred sports where they are on a localized base, and they have like 70 sports in the app. It's a very neat application. I think the guy who invented it, Biagio Bartoli. Yes, he worked in the same company as you did in Delta Tre, right?
Yeah, we worked together. Great guy, great vision. He always had, his entrepreneur spirit inside. So I'm glad things are going very, very well for him.
And Stefano as well.
Stefano, me too.
Those are great guys, great product people. They created such a great product. And so from one hand is a social application for people doing sports, and on the other is a very thorough and comprehensive management tool for sports clubs of all kinds and sizes. So it allows clubs to manage a relationship with their own clients, customers, sports people, and to offer services at a very accessible cost on the cloud. So this is basically what it is. And what is now is proving very interesting because we're working with them harder to sustain the business, to help them sustain the business. And but now with the crisis that came out with this very interesting survey around the declining sports and the practice and the consumption of sports during the crisis, and then we had like numbers like of a consistent reduction in the first weeks of the crisis, and now they are tracking how, and they are supporting sports clubs as they change the model into a more virtual one. So offering services to people at home in the areas of fitness. So it's very interesting to follow them because they move very fast. They've been able very, very good at adapting their model to this new kind of world we're living in. And so that I wanted to mention these three ones because they are all three very innovative. We believe that they could be game changing, and they have a very good team behind them. So we are really proud to be part of these projects, and we believe strongly on their success. Then this is not to say that there are not other examples in a network of wonderful projects, but if I had to name three, these are my first.
Perfect. I have one question from Jada that is asking, can you give us some advice for a new startup company? So what would be your advice for launching a new company in this very dramatic situation? What would be your advice, Federico?
Well, if I had one, maybe I would do my own. It's difficult to say. I don't think this is this could be the great time for starting a new company if you had an idea, pretty disruptive but I would be too superficial to answer to this question because it's too wide, too large. So I would say What my advice is basically on the line of what I've said earlier. So if you think of doing a business, if you think of creating a startup, you should think of creating a business first, not just something that is just a cool thing to do. And to create a business, you need to have a solution to a problem most of the times, and you need to have a market of people buying this product. And not necessarily the sports world is the right world. Sports world is a small niche comparing to the whole industry. And it's a very complicated business, an area of industry. And it's a very complicated, a bit tricky as an industry, because you either go to the pro sports, but it's a small one. You have very few clients. They have money, but they're not willing to spend this money. And you have the amateur sports world, which is vast, but they have no money. So it's difficult to create a business out of sports. So the advice that I could give is to think of thinking of technological solutions that could start with sports and in sport, but it could be applied to other verticals like media or other verticals, and this could be key. This could be key not just to thrive as a business, but also to fundraise as investors, especially not in a preliminary and a seed stage, are looking for businesses that can grow fast and big. Not necessarily this is the case for everyone. I mean, you can have a good business working well, giving work to people and creating EBITDA, value, but not necessarily going to an exit. And this works fantastically well. It's not a big deal. But it has to be a business selling to someone. So don't fall in love with an idea, but try to think of an idea as a potential business opportunity.
That's great, Federico. I really appreciate your time. You dedicated an hour for this live. I really do appreciate, specifically in this very delicate moment. I really thank you for being with us today, for being with me, and hope the people that were listening learn something different and learn specifically what you guys are building, that in my opinion is wonderful. So helping tons of companies, tons of startup companies, not just to fundraise himself, but also, to track a proper path of growth, possible growth around different sectors, in particular the sports sector. So really I appreciate your time, and thanks for being with me today.
It's been a pleasure for me. Thank you for inviting me and having me in your show. And good luck, and we'll stay in touch. And hello to everyone.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Bye-bye.